So first we need a reader on page 218. Chris, are you ready? All right, so we're going to tackle a complicated question here, number one. It's going to be similar in format to some other questions that we've already seen. This one is a little bit trickier because it involves percentages, so we'll handle those in due time. Let's go over to Dwight for number one, please. Okay, so here's the basic idea. I don't know how many of you guys are like coffee addicts, but you imagine like a bag of coffee. It might be all Colombian beans, or it might be a mixture of some Colombian beans and some other kind of bean and some third kind of bean, right? All mixed together, and they look different. And if you're an expert in this kind of thing, you can identify the different kinds of beans by looking at them, right? So, so we're going to start by drawing a picture. Now, there isn't a question in here. This is just a setup, and all the questions are down here. I'm going to encourage you to not look at the questions at all, but do a whole lot of work and then eventually look at the questions when you're ready to answer all of them without being distracted by them. So here's the diagram that I'm going to draw. So I'm going to imagine that this coffee shop owner has a big bucket full of beans, and we're going to put a line somewhere here. And the beans at the bottom, which kind are they? Are they the old or the new? They're the old ones. So I don't know how high this line goes, but somewhere at the bottom she's got the old beans, and then everything up here at the top is new beans, and it's completely full, this bucket. All right. And the next thing that we want to draw is some percentages. So let's go ahead and talk about percentages over here in the left-hand side. So these new coffee beans, what percentage of them are the Colombian beans? It is 20%. So we'll just put 20% here. And the old beans, what percent were Colombian? 35. Okay, so far so good. And I'm going to write the word all beans right above the bucket here. All right, and I'm going to write something down here at the bottom. I'm going to write the word total. So I want to know, just in terms of weight, what's the total weight of all the beans in this bucket? It's 40 pounds. The whole thing is filled and it's a 40-pound bin. So 40 pounds of beans, some of which are Colombian beans, some of which are not, some of which come from the old blend, some of which come from the new blend. It's quite a complicated setup. Okay, and then I'm going to make one more column here. Let's do this one in red. I'm going to put Colombian beans over here. All right, so imagine that you work in this coffee shop and you're an expert and you can tell the Colombian beans from all the other kinds of beans. And let's go ahead and take a look at these beans here at the bottom of the bin, the old beans. Imagine you were going to take out just the Colombian beans and put them over here on the side. So I'm just going to make a smaller, like some of those old beans are Colombian beans. And we're just going to take them all out and plop them over here. Now what we need to do is oh, there's one more thing that we were going to put in. This H, where does it go? Yeah, it says H is the weight of the old house blend. Is H just the Colombian beans, or is H all the beans in the old house blend? It's all of them. So then right down in here, H is the number of pounds, right? Number of pounds in the old house blend. All right, so before we get over to the red section there, I jumped the gun just a little bit. What I want to do is figure out what this guy right here is equal to. Some expression for the number of pounds in the new house blend, all the beans that are up here at the top. And I'm going to cross some stuff off temporarily. I'm going to say ignore all of this, except I can't ignore all of that. So try to ignore all of this, and just focus on that stuff in the middle. H of the pounds in this bin are from the old house blend. The rest of them are the new house blend, and it's a total of 40 pounds of beans in altogether. So what expression goes up there for the new? It's 40 minus H, right? The total is 40 pounds. Each of them are already accounted for. So this is a 40 minus H right there. Okay, so now I'm ready to get back over to the red stuff that I had started on before. I just want to imagine picking out the Colombian beans only from this old house blend. Now we have H pounds of beans altogether down there at the bottom, and 35% of them are what? Are the Colombian beans, right? So if I wanted to like just plop only the Colombian beans from this old house blend over here on the right-hand side, can you guys figure out what expression would go in there to tell me the weight of just the Colombian beans from the old house blend? Something times 35% is H times 35%. Yeah, H times 35% represents the weight of the coffee beans from that bottom section. Could you close the door for me, Dwight? So again, how many pounds of beans are in total at the bottom? It's a letter. It's H. So there's H beans down there. 35% of them are Colombian beans. So if I just wanted to pick out those Colombian beans and set them over here in red, I would have, the number of pounds I would have would be 35% of each. Yeah? That's the number of pounds of Colombian beans we have on the bottom section. But now I want to write this in some more mathematical way. So how can I write an expression for 35% of H? 0.35 H. Right? What's the assumed operation? Multiplication, right? We know that of is multiply. So change 35% into 0.35, and that's it. So 0.35 H represents the, I should write one more word up here. This is the weight of the Colombian beans. 0.35 H is the weight of the Colombian beans. So in English, we took the percent that was Colombian beans and we multiplied by the weight of all the beans in that section, and that gave us just the weight of the Colombian beans. We need to play the same game up with the new blend. So it was the percentage times however many pounds of beans we had. What's the percentage for the new blend? It's 20, so 20% of, what's the weight of all the beans up there? 40 minus H, right? That's the weight up there. And then we want to write this as a simple expression. 20% becomes 0.20. You could just write 0.2, but that. And then, yeah, we need that 40 minus H there. And we need it in parentheses. So it's still the same, percent times the number of pounds of beans. Okay, any questions so far? Okay, so the last thing that I want to do is fill in the bottom here. So I'll keep it in red. What did this bottom row represent? Was total. So I know there's a total of 40 pounds of beans of any flavor. What I want to do is find find how many pounds of beans there are that are just the Colombian. So what do I do with the two expressions? I'll highlight them here. I've got that many pounds of Colombian beans and separately that many pounds of Colombian beans. If I want the total weight of the Colombian beans, we add those two things. So we can fill that in here. 0.20 times 40 minus H plus 0.35 H. Any questions on that? Yeah, so we haven't even looked at the questions, but we are going to simplify that thing right now. Yeah. So let's simplify that. So let's rewrite that down here. And what's the first thing we're going to do to simplify? Distribute 0.20 to get rid of those parentheses. So we go do our lobster claw thing here, a single, like half of a claw. So 0.20 times 40. Without a calculator, we should be able to get that. That's 8 minus 0.20 times h. I'll just write it. I'm not going to write, well, I'll keep writing the 20. 0.20h. And then I'll copy the 0.35h. Which of these terms are like terms that we can simplify? Yeah, the two h terms, right? So I'm going to copy the 8 there. And I said that it gets a little bit tricky because we've got to be good with decimals to solve these problems. Negative 0.20h, positive 0.35h. Yeah, it's positive 0.15h. Any questions on that? Right, it's okay. So even if you're not super interested in coffee beans in this particular example, I think there are plenty of other examples that are interesting that follow the same basic idea. Just one off the top of my head. Suppose that you're in a hospital and you need a certain you need a drug to be given to you, and it's injected, and it needs to be of a certain concentration. Like you need like 30% of the strength of whatever drug that you need. Well, these drugs, they don't just, the hospitals can't just buy a drug in any percentage that they want, in any strength that they want. So there are standard strengths that you can, as a hospital person, you can buy a certain drug at you can buy one that's 10% strong, and you can buy one that's like 40% strong. And like those are the standard percentages. And in order to make one that's 30% strong, you have to combine, and you got to combine in the right way. Right? Maybe you got to have like twice as much of the stronger one compared to the weaker one. And so in order to figure out how much of each one to mix, it's this kind of a setup. All right, so we did all of that without looking at the questions, and I think that's a good idea because the questions, we're going to answer like the same questions every time. We've got to fill in all this stuff to answer the questions. So so I'd say don't get distracted by the questions, just do everything and then fill in the blanks. Okay, first one, an expression for the weight of Colombian beans in the old house blend. Weight of Colombian beans. All right, which column is the Colombian beans? Is it the blue or the red? It's the red. All the Colombian beans information is over there in the red. So we want the weight of the Colombian beans in the old house blend. Which expression is that? It's the 0.35h. So that's our first answer. Okay, the next one, give an expression for the weight of the new house blend. I want to point out that there are 3 questions in here that involve Colombian beans and only one that doesn't. So the place we're going to go to get this information is different from the place we're going to get all the other information. So the weight of the new house blend having nothing to do with coffee beans is in the middle here. It's in blue. It's the all beans, and it's the only one that's all beans. What's the weight of the new house blend? Is 40 minus h. All right, next question is the weight of Colombian beans in the new house blend. Colombian beans, new, what's that? So let's see, so new is up here at the top and the Colombian beans is red, so it must be the top right. 20 times 40 minus h. All right, and the next one, expression for the weight of Colombian beans in the bin. So that doesn't reference the new or the old, so what are we talking about here? If it's not new or old, what row is it? It is red, and it's the bottom one, it's the total, right? Because it doesn't reference old or new, we must be talking about everything altogether. So it's that bottom expression before we simplified it. So that was 0.20 times 40 minus h plus 0.35h. And then finally E said simplify. We've got it right up here in blue, 8 plus 0.15h. Questions? Is there anything that we filled in up here that we didn't actually end up writing down here? Yeah, I feel like we didn't write really anything extra up here at the top. Like we filled in all these blanks and we needed all of that information. So again, I'd encourage you not to look at the questions because I'm going to ask you the same kinds of questions for every one of these problems. But don't bother looking at them. Just fill everything in upstairs and then place your answers. Because if you try to be guided by these questions, it could be, I don't think it's going to make it any easier and it might just be more confusing. And the other thing I'll say is don't bother memorizing the order in which these things appear, these questions here, because I promise you I'm going to shuffle them up and you can't rely consistently on, oh, the part B is always the total minus the variable. It's not going to be that way. So again, don't be distracted by the questions and don't bother memorizing the order of these questions. Okay, next thing I want to do is on the next page. And first thing I'm going to ask you to do is correct a typo that I made. See there in part H, it's kind of in the middle of all this stuff. It says x squared plus 2x. Cross off the 2. It should just be x squared plus x. So just cross that 2 off completely in part H. All right, so here's what I'm going to ask you to do here with these circles. So I'm going to highlight just the top row. And then separately, I'm going to highlight the middle row. And then separately, I'm going to highlight this. So these are 3 different, completely different exercises. So they get separated by those rows, okay? So here's what you're going to do. You're going to take a look at the first expression. This exercise is about simplifying expressions. And it was on the quiz, and a lot of folks had a lot of trouble with the simplifying expressions part on the quiz. So here's the idea. In this first line, there are some expressions that are equivalent to each other. So the first thing I see is x squared. What you guys are going to do is write x squared in that first circle. Maybe write it off towards the left because you're going to use this circle several times. And then you're going to look at x plus 2 and you're going to say, is x plus 2 equivalent to x squared or is it different? It's different, so it goes in a different oval. So I'll put x plus 2 down here. Definitely not the same. And then we'll look at the next one. X times 2. Is x times 2 equivalent to x squared? No. Is x times 2 equivalent to x plus 2? No. So this is a different thing again, and I'll put x times 2 right down there. What's the next expression up here? X plus x. X plus x. Is x plus x equivalent to x squared? No. Is x plus x equivalent to x plus 2? To x plus 2? No. Is x plus x equivalent to x times 2? Yes, it is. So you're going to put x plus x right in there. And my guarantee is that in each row, you're going to have 3 different kinds of expressions. So we're going to use these 3 ovals over and over again. But I can tell you definitely that this very next thing is going to be equivalent to one of the ones we've already filled in. All right, we just did D. What's the next one? It's x times x. Is x times x equivalent to x squared? Yes. So equals x times x. So every one of those things goes in one circle. And the last one is 2x. Which circle does that go in? Bottom one. So this is really the same as 2x. Yeah? Okay. And the last part of this, the reason you have the algebra blocks in front of you, is that I want you to just temporarily put algebra blocks that represent each of these things into the circle. So x squared, and the key is over here in case you don't remember. The little green guys are worth 1. The yellow rods, we're calling them x. And the yellow square-looking things are x squared. Okay? So I'll hold them up real quick here. So we've got x is the rod, x squared is the square-looking thing, all right? And then the little green guy is 1. Okay, so what are we putting in the first oval? X squared, so just put an x squared, a square, into your oval. Yeah. Okay, and then x plus 2. So go ahead and build an x plus 2 and put it in the second oval. And then in the last oval, put the 2x. And once I see your group is good, you move on to the next one. You're going to use the same ovals, but you're going to then just start over here with this green highlighted stuff.